Okay, so what I'm going to show you in this last video tutorial of the beginner's course is how to make panoramic images, which people call panoramas. And just to show you these images that I've taken here, this is how you take images for a panorama. Starting from the right hand side of this scene, you can see the bridge on the left there. We're going right to left, so you can see the bridge is moving across. I'm overlapping the images all the time as I go along, because in a moment when we get into Photoshop, Photoshop is dependent on this overlapping to help align the images together. So if we keep moving along, you can now see the cathedral in view. You can see it move across the image as it overlaps, and that's the final image there. So how do we stitch these together? Well, that part is actually quite straightforward. What we need to do is jump into Photoshop here, and you want to go to File, Automate. It's right down near the bottom, and at the very bottom of that sub menu is something called Photo Merge. So we need to click on that, and Photo Merge will bring up this window full of options. Now on the left there's the layout, and that gives you various different options of how you can align those images and how you tell Photoshop you want to put them together. For a panoramic, I find that auto always works just fine, so just leave it on auto. And now we need to find the images, so we click browse, and here's the images here. So I want to select all of them, so I can select all of them by clicking on the first image, and if you hold down shift on your keyboard and then click on the last image, you'll select all the images together, and then you can click open, and you see they all appear in this menu in the center here. Now we just click OK, and now Photoshop will spend a few minutes just merging all these images together. Now you'll see they're starting to appear in the layers palette on the right here. What this is doing is it's relying on that overlapping of the previous image, which I mentioned just a moment ago, and what it's doing is it's using the horizon in particular and any other areas where the contrast changes and the range of colors change, and it uses those parts of the image to align each image up next to each other, and it actually does a really good job of merging them together, so it looks ultimately it looks seamless. You can't see where the joins are. Now this usually takes 2 or 3 minutes depending on the size of the images that you've got, really. You'll see that when you view these images that which I gave you in the last lesson, you'll see that all these images are actually quite small files, all under a megabyte at least, and the reason for that is really just to speed things up for this tutorial. Believe it or not, this is actually quite quick the way it's going through these images. I would recommend, if you're doing this at home and you're wanting a big image to go on the wall that you're going to go and get printed, say you're going to get that printed at 100 centimeters wide by say 30 centimeters tall, and you want to be working at images that are a bit larger than this, so I would encourage you to not do any resizing of the images. Just take them directly out of camera and put them straight in to Photoshop. Now you don't want too many images. See, I've got 9 here altogether. I'd say that is more than enough. Any more than that and you're just going to have an absolutely huge file that your computer will probably struggle to cope with. So if we give it just a moment, it should shortly bring this image up in the completed form. Nearly there. Right, and here we go. Should just appear now. Right, here we go. Here's our panoramic image, and I'm just going to change the view mode just so you can see this in full screen. I'll just hide those tabs there. So this is it. It looks a little bit untidy around the edges because it's had to rotate each of these images to line them up properly. But if we zoom in, you can see no matter how hard we look, cannot see any joins in this image. Now, as I say, it's going to be untidy across the top, but we haven't got to worry about that, because what we'll do in a moment is we'll just use the crop tool to trim that up and get rid of any unwanted edges. So you'll see now the benefit of shooting this in portrait orientation rather than landscape, because we really need this height here in the image, and we need that because we are going to have to crop it down now. So if that was narrower than it was, we're going to get a very, very thin image, and we don't want it too thin. We just want it wide enough that you can see the full breadth of the landscape, something that's quite hard to capture in camera. So now that we've seen that it's stitched those images together quite well, we'll just jump back out of this, and what I'll do is you don't need to do this, but I'm just going to turn off these layers just to show you how it joins them together. If I just zoom in here, you can see the rough edges where it's actually stitched these together. Now you can see that join is right here. In fact, if we look down the bottom here by the bridge, see that join is right there, and if I just turn this layer back on, we just cannot see that gap where we've put it back together. Okay, so the image is made up of 9 different images like that are all stitched together to create one full image. So now what we want to do, before we crop it, to speed things up, we want to reduce all these layers down into one single image, or one single layer even. So what we need to go to is layer palette, the layer option menu just at the top there, and down to flatten image at the bottom. Now you'll see this puts all of those into one image there, and what this will do is it'll reduce the file size quite a lot, because now it's dealing with one layer rather than 9. Okay, so I'm just going to move this layer palette out of the way so you can see this a bit more clearly, and we can get rid of that channels there as well. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to crop the image. Now I'm just going to press the F key that makes this full screen. Now that it's full screen, it makes it a little bit easier to crop this down. So what I'm doing is just first of all dragging the crop tool over the entire image, and now I'm just moving the tops and bottoms in, just so it just gets rid of any white edges around the sides. So I'm just going to move it in a touch on the side there, and I'm quite happy with that. You'll see that the horizon isn't aligned correctly, but instead of doing this in the crop mode, I'm going to show you another way of just aligning this properly. So I'll just click enter, and there we go. I've got a little white edge there, so I'm just going to crop it further, just in a touch. There we go.